Hi, everyone. I'm Niels. I'm the founder and CEO of Kruger Aviation, the world's leading company when it comes to lavatory mirrors. We are within plastics since nearly 100 years. So our really pre-owners of the company were like more the rebel of the industry of plastics. Next to that, I'm the founder and the CEO of the Green Mobility Interior. It's a company who develop new materials and opportunities for a green cabin, for cars, for aircraft, the whole mobility industry.
Okay, thank you. And Seth, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Seth Miller. I'm the editor and founder at PaxX.aero. I am somewhere between a journalist, pundit, analyst, and general pain in the ass, if I'm allowed to say that on this episode here. But, I'm excited to see what we can come up with here today in terms of what are some real practical solutions that might actually lead to progress in this campaign.
Indeed. Thank you, Seth. And Antonio, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Antonio Ficca. I'm responsible for marketing and strategy at Explicit. I joined this company 4 months ago. If you don't know Explicit, it's a relatively new player in the seat market for commercial aviation, known for having disrupted this industry with the only carbon fiber and titanium seat ever certified for commercial aviation. And lately, the company is growing and expanding its footprint to cover also other type of mobilities. So high-speed trains, buses, advanced air mobility, eVTOLs, and so on and so forth. But commercial aviation remains our primary objective.
Thank you, Antonio. And then we have Carl as well in the panel. Would you like to say a few words about yourself?
I'm Carl Hewson. I'm the technical director or CTO of Zote Foams PLC. We're a manufacturer of foam products and have been lightweighting plastics for the aviation industry for the last 80 years and in existence for over 100 years. We supply raw materials in foam form to many interior manufacturers and have done for many years, ranging from polyethylene type foams through to PVDF type foams and others in between.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carl. And then we also have David here today.
Hi, I'm David Sandiford. I'm with Mohawk Industries, specifically the Mohawk Group, which is a division of Mohawk Industries. Mohawk Industries is the world's largest flooring company, selling everything from carpet to hard surface flooring to tile. If it goes on the floor, we manufacture it. Within the Mohawk Group, we have a division. It's the aircraft carpet. I'm head of aircraft carpet and transportation for Mohawk Industries, supplying carpet to major airlines, Airbus, Boeing, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. So yeah, like I said, a very good range of companies represented here, and I'm sure this is going to be a very insightful discussions. If we want to get started about thinking about in what ways have you noticed the global net zero targets impacting the aircraft interiors industry as well as aviation in general? Niels, would you like to maybe make a start on this?
So what we pointed out on last year's AIX is that we showed on our booth in huge letters, zero emission cabin, because it's possible. And that is like our main target overall. And we know as one small mid-sized company of Germany, we can't make that happen on our own. So this is a totally industry target that we had to achieve together. And we need to show the world that the aviation industry is one of the most promising solutions if we want to save the planet. And that is completely the opposite what you read in newspapers or what you hear in the radio, or if you just take a look at the Google advertisement that we have here in Germany. It always showcases, okay, choose the train because CO2 emission is less what we have on a flight. And that is really something that we have to work against. What we do as Kruger Aviation is that we said, okay, as a manufacturer of aviation, we want to be CO2 positive by 2030. And one of our biggest steps towards that goal is that we say, okay, we will have a zero waste production. And if we take a look into plastic production, like we are specialized in vacuum deep drawing, you always have like a waste of material after trimming by 20%. And recycling materials are currently not allowed on Airbus aircraft cabins. So it is all virgin material only. But we worked on that process since more than 3 years already. And we are really close to pass the goal to get the certification by Airbus. And we hope that many ideas like that will follow. And yeah, that is the biggest thing we currently do, as or more or less one example of 4 or 5 we can hand out. So.
That's brilliant. It's definitely sounds like a lot of work, but definitely very very worthy and definitely contributing to this these goals. So
One of the things that I've seen is,
and we can ask that to Explicit. So at least if I'm not currently wrong, if you take a look at your backrest shell and things like that, there are still vacuum forming parts and there's always waste. And usually the recycler don't want to have that material because of flammability, smoke, and tox things. And we developed a very special process to make sure that we can bring it back to aviation. And that can create an impact, especially for the seat manufacturer who have the biggest weight part of the cabin.
One of the things that we've seen happen is, I've always said if I can make it weigh nothing, cost nothing, and last forever, I'm going to move a lot of product, right? And so that's always been true in the aviation world. Reduction in weight also helps in terms of fuel savings and so forth. And Mohawk has done a good job in terms of using sustainable material in the manufacturing of our carpet. We are beyond carbon neutral, meaning that we are now all of our commercial products, whether it is commercial flooring for the building industry or whether it is commercial flooring for aviation industry, is beyond carbon neutral. And we're one of the few companies that have signed the climate pledge. So with a target of being carbon neutral by 2040 in terms of our manufacturing processes. But the biggest change that I've seen is, it's not only can it weigh nothing, cost nothing, and last forever, but now the decision makers in the industry are increasingly wanting to understand what the sustainability attributes of the products are, which then becomes a challenge because there's no equal measurement, whether it's an EPD or any other tools that those decision makers are using to evaluate each product equally.
Indeed. Any thoughts, anyone else?
Well, maybe I can offer before Seth shakes us up a bit. I can try to do that as well. I was reflecting on this and I'm asking myself, are we really seriously addressing sustainability as an industry? I think the answer is no. In the sense that when you look at other industries and the way they present themselves to the public, and by the way, I'm not saying that we are not, but it looks like we are not in aviation. When you look at other industry and the way they present it to the public, it's more intuitive, it's more clear, it's more simple for people to understand that riding a train instead of flying a plane is more sustainable. Whether it's true or not, that's secondary. For the public, it's more intuitive. We have examples of other industry, even new industry in aviation, who have marketed themselves, presented themselves, and introduced themselves as totally green, innovating the way mobility works through advanced air mobility, for example, all electric vehicles. So when you look at the cabin, in the past 30 years, you walk into the cabin, it looks more or less the same than it looked 30 years ago. So no wonder why a passenger is walking into a cabin and asking himself, okay, what's the difference here? I think there is an element of sometimes aviation, it's I guess the enemy of itself. We put so many barriers to innovation that we don't end up really innovating, and that's to me a concern that I'm not saying it applies to this panel, but it should make us reflect as a whole. In the seating industry, and of course I'm working for Explicit, so automatically you would think you're saying this because you're working for Explicit, but in the seating industry, 80%, 90% of the seats, if you put them side by side, they all look the same. They all have aluminum structure, foam, synthetic leathers, they all look the same, except Explicit is the only seater manufacturer that decided to do everything in carbon fiber anti-dining. Everything, the primary structure of the seat. That's innovative. That's a step change. That's completely different from anything that is available out there. I think we have to take risk. That's the word that aviation is not comfortable with, because risk is always associated with safety. But we have to take some risk if we really want to make an impact. All of us, we are trying. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying we're not. But if we don't really step change things, then things will stay more or less the same, will look the same, and the public will feel like nothing is really changing. I think that's the challenge we have to overcome. And I've been in this industry for 25 years. I know it's not easy. But if we do continue with step change, continue with micro steps, at the end we lose the train. And I use train as a contentious word there.
It's a very good point, actually. Seth, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'm intrigued by Antonio's comment there about lining all the seats up and they all look the same, and how things haven't changed over 30 years. Especially because in the industry, we know that they have. We know that seats are much lighter today, even if you don't go full carbon fiber, than they were 30 years ago. We could argue that airlines have offset that by putting more of them in the same planes, which comes with some efficiencies, also in terms of fuel burn for total passengers moved. But so there's some compromise there, we'll say, in passenger comfort against the weight savings that is a little hard to balance. But overall, these steps, we are seeing progress in a lot of these things. I think one of the challenges we face as an industry, though, is beyond the, can I make my seat weigh a kilogram less per set, is convincing the world and actually prove, and it actually being that these small steps are enough to get on a path that gets us to a true net zero environment. David, you mentioned your products are all now manufactured to a net zero standard, or positive, even carbon positive. I'm assuming that's either carbon capture or offsets. And so, right, so there's some things about those that maybe the industry doesn't fully understand, or the society doesn't fully understand. Are they really working? Are they enough? And, I hate to say that in addition to doing the stuff, the industry, we have to educate the public about what that means, and, sort of why what we're doing is progress, even though these seats all still look the same. But is it more of a issue around what we're seeing and what's being projected, or what we're actually doing?
Absolutely. I agree with you there.
We do have to make sure. We do have to make sure that we don't compare bananas with apples, and we have to stop the greenwashing in the world and just like focusing on CO2 emission. Because if you take a look left and right to the CO2 emission, and you will recognize how dramatic the consumption of the resources for the construction, for example, for rails and roads are. And knowing that water and sand are the most limited resources that we have on the world, you will really rethink if really the way to bring mobility into the air is a worth thing compared to use the train. And I really want to say that if we want to save the Earth, we have to bring mobility to the air. And that is not just for the global travel. And that's why I usually ask, like, as well, friends, one question. And what would you think? A full electric airplane or an electric car on the road? What do you think makes less impact to the Earth? And usually the Earth we fly above is maintenance free compared to the road. And that's just a small example that really can describe everyone that there's a huge opportunity if you bring mobility into the air. And that is something that we have to point out as an industry, that you have to compare A to B on the total result for Mother Earth. And it's not like CO2 emission against CO2 emission, it's the global impact to the Earth. And that's what we have to showcase as well. And yes, we have to make our aircraft climate neutral, the cabin and the way we fly. Yeah, that's our mission. And I believe we will make that happen because we are one of the most innovative industries that we have in the mobility world. Mm-hmm. And I guess like the trains are much far behind us if we are talking about innovation. And so that is a point we have to go through from my point of view.
Yeah. To say to Seth's point, I mean, you know, one of the things that we're doing is lessons learned from other industries, right? So if you look at the commercial office space, you know, you're looking at, having to specify LEED certified products, you know, that there are standards matrix for measuring the sustainability footprint of a product in different industries that I don't believe have migrated to the same extent within a cabin interior, right? So, you know, imagine if you had a LEED certified cabin interior, right? Then you're able to educate the public on what is sustainable in terms of your cabin interior as an airline, right? And you're using a metrics that eliminates, to your point, the greenwashing effect of, you know, taglines like cradle to cradle or, you know, other, you know, recycled content. You know, those aren't not always necessarily the most sustainable products because they have a nice tagline to them. It is all about understanding what goes into carbon neutrality.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think this will bring us quite nicely to the next point about collaboration with airlines and cabin interior suppliers and material suppliers. So in what ways do you think airlines and the interiors supply chain is collaborating to create a more sustainable cabin? What goes into this work, sort of?
Yeah, I'll just pick up on that last question and then move on to this one. You've got to accept that there is a carbon premium that we're all prepared to pay for certain things, such as safety, right? And neutrality isn't really neutrality. The energy's got to come from somewhere. The materials have got to come from somewhere. And while we can offset to some extent, there is still going to be a choice that something's going to need a bigger offset than something else, right? In terms of materials and what we've done, we always focus on the biggest impact, which for us has been fuel burn. You know, that fuel usage in an aircraft is in use over a long lifetime of an aircraft, and we get used not just in the cabin interiors, but we get used in the interiors by the OEMs. So they're going to be in the aircraft for 25 plus years. At that, you need the lightest material possible to minimize the fuel burn. And that's always been our focus. And it's not just about our material, the foams that are used in there, it's about other materials that are used with them. So, for example, if you can make something that friction fits rather than need an adhesive, it's not just about the lightweight plastic being a foam, it's about eliminating other materials. Other innovations that we've been pushed on to are things like monomaterials. Can you make all of the materials the same? So at the end of the 25 years, it seems a long way away, at the end of the 25 years, it's all the same material. We don't need to sort it out. We know it can go back into one recycle stream. So there are a number of things, design flexibility, design innovation, that all can contribute, including the to lightweighting, which includes reducing the weight of plastics by foaming them, that reduce fuel burn, which is one of the biggest impacts of aviation at the moment. If it goes electric, maybe the fuel becomes free and it changes the output of it.
Indeed, those are very good points. Thank you very much. And anybody else have?
Well, I think I can continue on the weight. There is that obvious example trying to educate the public and inform the public. The term educate, maybe it's misunderstood. It's more about information, inform the public about what matters. The weight is one of the easy one for people to understand. Mm-hmm. If you're lighter, it takes less to get anywhere, to fly anywhere, to move anywhere, and therefore you emit less. So I think weight is a key metric that should be used for measuring impact to the environment. Obviously cannot be taken in isolation, because you can be lighter but then made of materials that cannot be recycled or are made in a very non-environmentally friendly way, then it kind of defeats the purpose a bit. But we thinking a big picture, there are reports available out there, and constantly everybody is aligned in saying that 97% of the impact of a product in aviation to the environment comes from its operations. And so the number one priority for anybody should be reduce weight. Before anything else, reduce weight. And we knew that, explicit founders that came a lot of time before me knew that and figured out that if you want to reduce weight without compromising on comfort or robustness, which is extremely important to the airlines, or other factors, then you have to innovate, go with lightweight material. And that's what we did. If you want to then impact the rest of the 3%, there are other ways, recycling your own materials. We, for example, and some airlines do that, and Explicit is not the only one. We actually offer the program to our customers to take the seat back at the end of the life. And we would recommission the seat, or what is recommissionable, of course, into additional seat components. So you actually create this circular economy environment that enables us to A, deliver lightweight product, and B, actually recycle the material you build them with in the first place. But I think weight, the importance of weight, it's something that we can collectively use to make the connection between environment and impact. That could be a way, and many airlines are doing that in partnership with suppliers and the whole supply chain. Just one word on the idea of the EPDs, which David was bringing up, the Environmental Product Declaration. I believe there is an initiative that in Europe, for example, Airbus is coordinating in trying to put together a number of, actually the whole supply chain, the whole supply chain of a product, and get consensus around creating a standard to measure impact into the environment, which I think it's a great thing to do. And in that sense, our friends from the train business have done that some 15 years ago. So we need to. I'm just trying to bring a sense of urgency to the exercise, because time is a factor, and we like or not, most of the generations we're dealing with are used to have very quick wins. They are used to swipe left, swipe right, I get a date or I don't. Yes. And we like it or not, this is the mindset. We need to deliver with quick wins, impactful wins, meaningful wins, but wins. If we only talk.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that raises an interesting point. I mean, Niels, you mentioned earlier you're working with Airbus, collaborating with them, trying to get recycled materials on board, and you're 3 years into a new certification process. And, you know, the industry moves slowly. I understand there's safety concerns, there's challenges and things like that. But as an industry, are we, you know, acting as our worst own enemy here? Are we really getting in the way of our own progress? And you know, I obviously can't speak for Airbus in terms of what their analysis is on why you need virgin materials there, but it's sort of hard to believe that we're still fighting battles like that at some level. Would you agree?
Yes, I totally agree. So, but I have to say things are changing a bit. So we are always coming from the safety point. So that's what I learned like 26 years ago as a trainee, for mechanic for aviation. So every second word was safety, 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 safety. And so what we don't know, we will not trust in. So, and recycling was always like a dirty black box and no one understand, and there are huge risks inside. So we had to develop something that makes them comfortable. And what I can say, like when I founded the Green Mobility Interior, I named it Green Mobility Interior because I can't believe that sustainability will be a key fact for the aviation industry within the next 10 years. And what we see if we look backwards, like the last 2 years, we see a complete new mindset as well within Airbus and within the whole industry. And I think we are moving much faster than we did in the past. And everything we worked on the last 3 years can be ready to go within the next half year. And even if we go like into a detailed discussion just a few months ago. So time to market is getting shorter, which is a good news from my point of view. And I think if we start to change our way we look only on profit, we can make a change as well. So what I mean with that is if I as a company just take my success as my goal or my benefit of profit, we will not move forward as an industry. And that's why Lucas Kessner, you all know from the Kiss the Cabin Award, and me, together with 6 other companies, we are currently founding the Sustainable Aviation Campus, which is an idea where we bring airlines, companies, universities together and share our knowledge and our ideas. Because if I work on a solution and I can't move forward because I don't have the right idea, maybe there's someone outside there who have the right idea to go forward. And if we do that together with Airbus, with Boeing, Embraer, Bombardier, all as an industry, we will make bigger steps in a shorter time. And that is a lesson Airbus and all the other big OEMs have to learn. And maybe that's what we mentioned earlier, to take a bit risk, not regarding safety, but in trying new things.
Well, that's a good point with regards to, you know, it is understanding, you know, the weight of sustainability in procurement within the airline, understanding the weight of sustainability in each airline or each airframe manufacturer's decision-making process, right? Because we're seeing increased need for sustainability attributes or sustainable attributes within the products that we're manufacturing. But again, it goes back to the fact, is it clearly defined, and is the weight of the sustainable attribute defined in terms of the cost metrics, right? So it does go back to cost, right? So I can have the most sustainable product in the world in terms of, you know, its environmental impact, but if it's $10 more expensive per square yard, I'm going to have a hard time selling it in the marketplace. And so is there a value proposition for that in the decision-making process? And can you clearly define to us as suppliers, what the weight of that is in the decision-making process, whether it's Airbus or whether it is the airline selling product in the aftermarket?
That's a very good point, actually, David.
Yeah, and David, you mentioned, the increased cost at the CapEx side of things. I'm just curious, are any of you finding that you're able to have a reasonable conversation with the airlines about, yes, it's going to cost you a little more in CapEx, but OpEx, we're going to save you, 10 pounds, which per flight times however many aircraft and whatever ends up to $1 million in fuel savings and emission savings or things like that. Do those
exactly
conversations work?
Yes, that's exactly how Mohawk sold nylon carpet. Mohawk was the first company to bring nylon carpet into the industry. And the exact way we sold it was a value proposition in terms of it's going to last 6 times as longer than wool carpets, right? And so in doing so, I'm going to reduce your total annual spend because carpet is a consumable. And, therefore, you're going to reduce your overall annual purchase cost. And so there's a very huge value proposition. And I have spreadsheets that I've created that outline that value proposition as well, right? But the thing that it has also done in terms of leading in sustainability is, the industry standard before Mohawk brought nylon to the market was wool. Well, you can't recycle a sheep because it's hair. So, with nylon, I can use recycled content in the nylon as I'm manufacturing the product, or now I can take the material that, I'm pulling off of the aircraft and have the ability to recycle and gain something back out of that nylon, where previously, the industry standard being wool, which was based on fire properties, was, not as readily available to recycle. Usually you're downcycling something of that nature.
Right. Is anyone else seeing those conversations work? I mean, I know spreadsheets aren't sexy, but do they work?
I'm not going to share the one I was working on just before this meeting, but I think the answer is yes. So I've been controversial at the beginning. I should be a little bit fair now. The answer is yes. I mean, I think over the past 10 years, you can say that maybe 10 years ago, if you would come to the customer and you say, give me $100 more for my product because it's green, they would probably laugh at you. Now, if you say, give me $100 more because of my product is green, they would say, okay, explain me why. So I think there is a shift that is going in the right direction, that brings that topic to the table. What the mistake I don't think we should do is to talk about environment as a whole. The concept needs to move to sustainability. And that's why I think the word is important, because as David was saying, you can be sustainable in different ways. And one is extending the life of your product. That is sustainable. One is recycling actually the product. Somebody was making an example about what you ask to your friend. I tell everybody, the number one thing to reduce environmental impact, which is the number one thing, reduce waste. Just stop buying, using, eating more than you need. If you do that, we save half of the problem. The energy of producing something we don't need, and the fact then as you burn it, you will emit. So certainly, reduction of waste is a great way to help your environment. So sustainability, I think, should be taken at a wider, let's say, perspective. I just want to say, though, I feel that the environmental angle, which was maybe very tiny and narrow 10, 15 years ago, now it starts to be more of a concern and more valued as a decision-making criteria. Is it the number one? I think we would probably lie if we say yes. But it's ramping up very quickly up the priorities, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about, waste generation, I mean, we had mentioned, that we're beyond carbon neutral with the 5% positive carbon offset. What we continue to try to do is, look at innovative materials, innovative manufacturing processes, dematerialization. Obviously, if I'm doing dematerialization, I'm leading to lighter weight products. So all of that goes in hand to hand. You have to take a holistic approach to what is sustainable. You can't just look at individual things like recycled content and so forth. If you're not taking a holistic approach, you're not doing it.
I was going to say, working with the OEMs, they've always had a dollar per pound or a euro per kilo price on weight saving. Mm-hmm. They've also had, let's call it a blacklist of substances that are hazardous to the environment, that thou shall not incorporate these unless they're absolutely critical to safety. What I've not seen is a dollar per sustainability metric. Okay, so if you can bring something that's made from biopolymers or something else that's sustainable, got a lower carbon footprint, then we will use that in preference and pay a premium for it, right? And I think that's somewhere that somebody needs to look at, somewhere needs to go. Very clear, right, that if you save weight, and it's obvious for the airlines and for the aircraft industry that weight as a capex saves them in OPEX, so they're prepared to pay for it. But that end of life, I've not seen anything incentivizing people yet. Either at OEM or in the airline. It hasn't flowed down to us.
Yeah, it's a very good observation, actually, Carl.
So just from my experience, I can say if we talk directly with airlines, they are willed to pay more for a sustainable reason. But if we are talking with the OEMs who have already sold the aircraft for a fixed price, you will not be able to certify a new product if it has a negative cost effect. So the goal is always to match the current price situation, because usually the OEMs are searching for a price decrease. So in the direct discussion with the airline, there are chances, which I can see. But with the OEMs currently, no chance at all. If you are not positive in the pricing, you will not get into the aircraft.
Very good point. Thank you, Niels. So there's also, of course, the side of the passenger experience to consider. So if we could all sort of discuss how we can, as industry, balance the need for sustainability in the cabin and also ensure a comfortable and enjoyable passenger experience.
Well, maybe as the seat representative in the panel, I guess passenger experience, comfort. Then the next person in charge should be the foam. But I can start there. I think we need to start, sorry, by the agreement that it shouldn't be an and/or story, because the moment you start debating whether you can compromise this for that, then some people will simply tune off and say, I'm not interested anymore. So that's where innovation needs to step in. That's where maybe government support to address the financial capex investment that any of us has to make to actually innovate. That's where maybe sustainability needs to be supported more than taxed. I don't know if I'm explaining myself there. But the point is, innovation is the answer. I mean, our answer is the answer, and we are not the only one, but our answer is don't reduce comfort to become lighter. If that's the way you do it, then people will feel they are trading one for the other. What we have done is we have become lighter by innovating, by step changing, by bringing carbon fiber and titanium into the commercial aviation. And by the way, we are not the only one. Airbus is doing A350 all composite, 787 all composite. So it's not like we invented the wheel. But the solution to us is innovation. The next step to us is then how do you use that saving? How do you transform that into something that actually make the passenger more comfortable while, for example, densifying cabin? Can a denser cabin still be perceived as more comfortable? And the answer is yes. If you innovate in the way you design your seat, if like you sculpt for example, you sculpt your backrest, like if you make sure your living space is actually increased through design features. And last word on that, there are also some, how can I put it, non-hard things that you can make to a cabin to provide a sense of well-being, which is not only coming from the cushion, the comfort of your cushion, or the space you have around your knees, but is your cabin bright? Is your window large? Is the lighting the right one? There are aspects you can integrate into your cabin experience with innovation, so keeping your sustainability in mind, that can and do improve the sense of well-being, which is comfort at maybe more softer level, but it is comfort.
Absolutely, all very good, very interesting and important areas of the cabin environment. Seth, what are your thoughts on the passenger experience and sustainability dilemma?
I'm certainly looking forward to catching up with Antonio in Hamburg to talk about how we're going to make a denser cabin more comfortable for all those passengers in economy who probably don't believe you right now. And I'm one of them, for better or worse. No, it is possible to at least, maintain comfort, but I do think there's a challenge in the industry, certainly having seen cabin densification and sort of padding, we'll say removed, right? The cushions are thinner. Now, are they as comfortable as they were? Maybe, maybe not, but they're definitely thinner than they used to be. And passengers who've been flying for a while notice that sort of thing. And any change is hard. So if you have the step change, the significant changes that are needed, implementing any of those is likely to bring some blowback from consumers who are not convinced that it's going to be as good as it was before. Change is hard. And so that is definitely a challenge we face as an industry, obviously doing it for good reasons mostly. But that is definitely a challenge that we face. I think one of the other interesting things, and we talk about just sort of overall weight and things in the cabin and the passenger experience, part of it's the shape of the seat, but also how are we entertaining passengers? How are we dealing with some of those other sort of bits and bobs that get attached on, whether it's cabin monuments or tray tables and cup holders, things like that. So it really is, end-to-end experience that becomes challenging, but there's a lot of different places to look at of where can we, shave a little bit here and there, and is it still as comfortable or as good, right? I mean, a smaller lavatory is lighter, but if everybody going in washing their hands ends up splashing water all over themselves, they're not going to be happy that they, burned 0.1 fewer kilos of carbon dioxide. Instead, they're going to be annoyed that their pants are wet.
Yeah. Yes, that's a very good point.
Yes, I see as well a chance in loose equipment, like if Seth mentioned like cup holders and accessoires. What we can do is, if we use recycled materials, like a reed cup that you find at Starbucks, if we have like specialized recycled materials that we use for passenger add-ons that they can use at every aircraft. So like a coffee cup, like a telephone holders, things like that, as an approved loose equipment, which is aviation-wise not need to be certified. But if we do that as well as an industry, to look a bit more to the passenger and to get ideas and create ideas how we as manufacturers as well manufacture accessoires for that industry to raise the overall comfort of our passengers. Doesn't matter if they sit in an Airbus and a Boeing, on an Recaro seat or an explicit, doesn't matter. And so that is something that I can see, where you give the passenger something in the hand with a green sign on, where you can feel sustainability, and maybe there are QR codes on the seat where you can use your smartphone to learn how sustainable that seat is, or how much weight it saves on a lifetime, how much petrol we save on that. So things like that is an idea that I can see for the passenger experience.
Thank you. So of course, there are challenges in making aviation more sustainable in the cabin and otherwise. So what challenges do you see in the net zero strategy implementation when it comes to cabin interiors, and how could we overcome these challenges?
More will for qualification of new materials and new products, and that is something that the OEMs have to take. And if we do that, there are many opportunities on the market that the OEMs have to pick. Yes, qualification is very price intense, but at the end of the day, if we want to go to the zero emission cabin, we have to make a change, and not only for the aircraft of 2035.
I think it's not just the OEMs. You're looking at regulators. And I know, as I sit on some of the FAA working groups on flammability, that they are working on tests that are quicker and cheaper to qualify new materials without going full scale. But this innovation and how we do it, I think there's several layers of it. And on the last answer, I would agree with Antonio completely. You've got to innovate, but you can innovate within the current constraints. So we've been in a fortunate position. We make a foam which is expanded using nitrogen gas. So we've been able to persuade people that borrowing nitrogen from air rather than using chemicals for foaming is beneficial and sustainable. And people have adopted that. The weight saving, back when seat cushions were little square cubes, there was a lot of that seat didn't need to be heavy polyurethane and just added weight. So people were innovative. You couldn't change the shape of the seat because most of the seat modules were that shape. So they displaced heavy polyurethane with lightweight polyethylene, put a fire block on it so it met the flammability regs, saved a huge amount of weight doing so. Subsequently, regulations can be changed when they realize that, and you can change the seat design. Okay? And you can change the seat structures that hold that seat cushion. So there's many things that you can do, both short-term and long-term, with materials like ours, which have got design flexibility and lightweight. And I think that's the big challenge, is how you work together on a short-term, let's save something, chip away at waste, chip away at waste weight, okay? And then medium-term, design and innovate. And then that longer-term thing, which is whole industry working together to aim to net zero and competing with other forms of transportation.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Anyone?
I was wondering who should pay for sustainability? Should somebody pay? Because I think in our experience, and I think in the experience of that has been mentioned and alluded to in this conversation, is that innovation has a cost. Some more advanced materials cost more than others. Therefore, bringing sustainability to aviation will require investment. Who has to pay for that investment? It's easy in a way, and I think we all have the tendency to do that. It's not me, it's the other guy. It's the next guy. When we buy our ticket, we have the option to choose if we want to carbon offset. I understood, I've seen stats, 1 every 100 actually pay for the offset. Why? Because it's expected. We expect that the cabin, it shouldn't be something I have to pay for. I want to fly green. It has to be part of the deal. So it's always the next guy. At the end, we as a society needs to accept that sustainability has a cost, and that cost
wouldn't speed the market help in terms of the cost and innovation, because the economy of scale cures all, right? So once we start scaling up, then the cost of any of the innovations then come down, right? So it's all about understanding, the challenges of what it takes to make that sustainable product, and then the challenge of how long it's going to take to certify that investment that we just made in innovation, right? Because if I can't start making thousands of yards of carpet, then, and I'm making 2 yards of carpet for a certification process, well, certainly there's a cost difference in making a smaller quantity of material than there is when you get to the economies of scale, right? Whether it's investing in new equipment, whether it's investing in new people, it's all about the economy of scale, right? So I think speed to market is going to be the biggest challenge in terms of understanding how companies can innovate and then be profitable quickly thereafter.
That's great observation, actually. So when it comes to untapped opportunities and areas for improvement, are there any that we could look into to further enhance the sustainability of cabin design and the passenger experience? Any thoughts?
Well, I would go back to what we see on the commercial design and development process for buildings. Whether it is a LEED certified building, the industry has more of a standard go-to-market strategy for whether it is the carpet that goes on the floor, the walls, the ceiling tiles, all of that comes under general certifications. Whereas within the airline industry, for at least the cabin interior, we don't have that same type of standardization. And I think that's going to be a challenge, is understanding what it takes to get to that type of standardization, where you could imagine this is a LEED certified cabin interior, right? Well, then at that point in time, once you have that standardization, it's much easier to educate the flying public, and then they can make an educated decision if they want to have a value proposition on flying this airline because they have a LEED certified cabin.
I'm skeptical of that. And I'm not sure I'm right or you're right, but I'm skeptical of that. I just, like Antonio just mentioned, passengers have been given the option to pay up a little for a offset or sustainable aviation fuel, depending on the airline, and almost universally choose not to. And we've known that the statistics are not great on that uptake. So, maybe a passenger might choose to fly an airline, assuming the price is the same. But then we're back to what's the cost of this, and can the airline find a way to either push that innovation and, costs down back to you as suppliers, or somehow pass them on to the consumers, or I guess get governments to subsidize the difference, which eventually comes back to consumers in forms of taxes. But I'm a little skeptical that passengers actually are going to go out of their way and make that choice, as opposed to sort of just expecting that airlines and the industry is doing the right thing and moving in this direction. And that's part of, table stakes at this point.
Well, I agree with you 100% on your skepticism. However, one of the things that I always say is, if I'm fishing, the more hooks I get into the fish, the more likely I am to reel them in, right? So, the sustainability attributes of the cabin for the flying public is just another hook that I'm trying to get in, along with the frequent flyer programs, along with the destinations that are served, along with the price of the ticket, and so forth. So it's all building an overall value proposition and a brand image for the airline in terms of the sustainable attributes that they're bringing to the marketplace, right? So they have to leverage that in terms of their branding. If they don't, it still doesn't diminish the fact that we as an industry need to go to a net zero focus in terms of the supply of materials for an airline cabin interior. But that being said, from a branding standpoint, that airline benefit, how many hooks can I get into that passenger, right? I want to be flying over and over and over again. Primary focus is going to be the destination served. If an airline doesn't fly there, you're not going to fly them, right? And then it's going to get into price, and then it's going to get into frequent flyer miles. And then what else are these people willing to pay for in addition to to get them as loyal passengers, right? So there is a certain percentage of the market that is going to make some decisions on that, albeit it might be minuscule. We still want to leverage every passenger that we can get so we get the dollar on the airplane.
Yeah, and I suppose if you can get a couple passengers hooked like that, it does reinforce the investment the airlines are making, and that makes it, everybody else gets those same environmental benefits accidentally, but a few at least did it on purpose.
And the other thing is, we shouldn't assume that it has to cost more with regards to innovation, right? By moving airlines from a wool product to a nylon product, we determine that they can have a more sustainable product, but then they can actually save money over time, right? So we shouldn't overlook the fact that innovation could lead to more cost-effective alternatives. Because again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to reduce the weight of the aircraft. If I'm reducing the weight, I'm dematerializing my products, right? If I'm dematerializing my products, I've got less raw materials. It should be beneficial in terms of trying to get to a sustainable solution if we're collectively looking at it with the right goals.
And does that come back to your comment about economies of scale earlier in terms of just, you can save on raw materials, but if you have to develop a new manufacturing process and new tooling and things like that, you have to be able to offset some of those savings and the costs and make it add up to the right numbers in the end. We're back to spreadsheets again. I hate this, but
Well, but again, that's how quickly can we get to market, right? If I get to market with a sustainable innovation that's also cost effective, right, then I have the capital as the market leader to go in and grab market share with that product. So as a business, going after sustainable attributes should be looked at as a benefit as opposed to a barrier.
And at the end of the day, if you are not willed to invest into sustainability, I guess you won't be a supplier in the future anymore, because this is a major topic. And we took the decision to invest 10% of our efforts for the next years always into sustainability. Yes, for a small company like we are, with a turnover of 10 million, to say, okay, I will invest 1 million for sustainability, that's a huge amount of money. But if we won't do it, we won't be the chosen supplier in the future. And that's what I believe in. So we have to invest into that future. And yes, maybe we will not reach our goal, zero emission cabin, but I still believe it's possible. So I do have to invest on the respect to my kids and the next generation following. So that's the mission we have to follow, and no doubt. And if Antonio is asking who have to pay, yes, we have to pay for that as well. And we could not hand over that to someone else. So we earned good money all over the last decades that we had in aviation, and we have to invest into the future. There's no question on that.
And I think that's what I meant when I said things have changed. In the past, innovation was only linked with the ability to gain more market share, to get a better product, to make more profit. And now we all sense that if sustainability is an investment, we all have to make. So that's the good news. I think that the mindset shift, I think it's across the board. I would say maybe not worldwide. Probably there are parts of this planet right now that have other headaches that are more urgent. But in general, a significant amount of us think like that. And that's where the optimism comes. That means investing in sustainability is actually an investment. It will be paid back because more and more people will actually recognize that the value of that investment. So I think we're going in the right direction. I just invite everybody to be bold. I think one of the reasons why I joined this company Explicit was I'm like, okay, these guys are different. They are going bold. Everybody else is doing A, they're going A opposite. I think there is an element of being bold, maybe not taking risks, but being bold in taking that extra step. And it can be introducing nylon into the carpet. It doesn't have to be only about carbon fiber and titanium. It can be about something else. As long as we recognize that is a step in the right direction, and that has a value that increasingly we should be able to pay for. At the end, one way or the other, whoever is paying, somebody is, and usually it's us. So whether he pay today in taxes or tomorrow in health bills, it still comes back to us. So the only question is when, not if.
I see a chance there because it brings us closer to our customers again, because we were running into two directions in the past. Our passenger want to go cheaper, and we want to innovate and go better. And we can't align that. And now everyone is focusing on sustainability. And if we can take our passengers on the hand, give them comfortable travels with a good feeling of sustainability, that is like the same way forward. So if we kill comfort for sustainability, that won't work. But if we have the combination of comfort, sustainability, and a mission which is aligned with our passengers, this is a good thing that I can see, because that is different like 10 years ago, where the expectations were not the same. Yeah. But Seth can make that a bit more clear, I think.
I think, I mean, in the question, looking at untapped opportunities, I think there's a lot in there. I mean, we're all sitting on this panel because we're all motivated by sustainability, and our companies are motivated by sustainability. There's a lot of companies out there who talk sustainability, but maybe it's not flowed down all the way to design engineers and the likes who are thinking that way, right? We get involved, and I use a specific example. We've got a very lightweight foam that's semi-rigid. You can use a semi-structural for monuments and such likes. And what you suddenly discover is that the rigid solid polymers or even composites didn't need that performance. And people are starting to displace one with the other. That tells me that there's an awful lot of low-hanging fruit there that we could immediately save a huge amount of weight and material, because if you're using, for example, a foam, it doesn't have to be foam, it could be ribbed plastic, but a foam, then you're taking out material content as well as weight from the aircraft, which is both CapEx and OpEx. And it's just not been seen. It's not, even in today's, information's everywhere. People aren't aware of these things. How we bring that focus to people and awareness that things are out there that they can include in designs and make short-term gains in sustainability, right, is I think a challenge for us all.
Indeed, yes. Lots of opportunities still out there, I'm sure.
Well, there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration on your point there, because your foam's wrapped by a surface material, a decorative surface material. It's sitting on a seat. In terms of the certification process, you got to build it all up to be able to do that. So there are technologies that then, when combined, then can benefit the whole, so that you can reduce the weight of the foam because you're using a different material to cover it. How are we as an industry collaborating, in that? Now, I'm not a seat guy, I'm a flooring guy. So I know, we're working with our supply chain, and we work with folks in terms of, how the carpet is cut and installed, and the labor related to putting the carpet on board the aircraft and things of that nature. But certainly, there's other opportunities, because, a lot of things are built and then certified as a whole unit, as opposed to, where I'm certifying a raw material every time I ship it.
Thank you, David. So we only have a couple more minutes left. But I'd like to say thank you so much, everybody, for your input today. It's been really insightful and certainly lots of food for thought. I don't know if anybody has something to add quickly We just got a couple of minutes, really.
I just want to motivate anyone to get closer to each other. So I really enjoy discussions like that, because that is what it brings us closer to each other. And if we see, like, around the world, people with the same mission, with the same heart for sustainability, we have to bring them together. So I'd like to invite you to our Sustainable Aviation Campus. And I really look forward to see all of you on the AIX, on the Crystal Cabin Awards, where we will showcase again that sustainability is our key. The trophy is made out of sustainable materials. So we should give us the hand and move forward and motivate other suppliers to go the same direction, with the focus to our customer, with the right way of innovation. And I'm really glad that you set up that meeting and to blow that message to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these conversations are great, and I do think I will continue my skepticism and my pain in the assitude, as it were. But these conversations are great. The next step is actually turning them into actions, and the industry is moving forward. I don't want to pretend that we're regressing or not making any progress, but we need more of it. We need to do it faster, and we can talk about it more in Hamburg. I look forward to seeing you all there.